Right, guys, so a couple of weeks ago I got a message from someone in the community called Jenny, and she wanted to send me some videos of her, some testimonials, and some other videos on her experiences with EMF and a few other things. So in this video, I'm just going to upload that for you guys to watch. So yeah, this is Jenny Ortman's current testimonial.
Alright everyone, hi, hope you're well. My name is Jenny Ortman and I am on a development program. My purpose for making this video is because I feel like it's important to document my experience on the program because I just know that as I develop, there'll become a time that I'll be able to help others. And so any resources that I can get together along the process, I'll be able to use eventually. And it's nice just because I can look back on these and share them to remember aspects of the program that may not be as clear as I move further on with development. But basically this video will serve as somewhat of a testimony, how basically the progression of my life up until starting the program, a little bit of my experiences on the program and where I'm at currently. So to start off, I'm 29 years old. I've only been on a development program for, I guess it's going to be a year in February, maybe the end of February. So not even a year yet. Basically, so beginning from from the beginning, when I was born, from what I know is, my mom unfortunately never really took good care of herself, so I was born with really high levels of copper and probably other toxic metals as well. And the only reason why I say that is because I become aware of it now that I've learned about development, learned about toxicity and how it affects the body. And it's quite prevalent to me that my mother, me and all my sisters have similar issues, just manifested in different ways that attribute to high levels of copper and other toxic metals and, poor eliminators and stuff like that. Super high anxiety, lots of symptoms that revolve around copper. So anyways, so that being said, I don't really know to the extent of that, how that affected all of, my development into childhood, but I know it did. And I know as a child, I don't really remember ever being too connected with my family. From as far back as I can remember, I just remember my childhood was pretty pleasant. I was well cared for. Unfortunately, a lot of nutrition and healthful lifestyle stuff was neglected in teaching me developing as a child, and so that kind of laid the foundation for what I experienced later on in my teenage years and also my adult years. But as for growing up, I was just outside all the time, playing with neighbors. We would play tag games, the things that kids would do, catch frogs and, ride bikes and stuff. And, it was great. That was my childhood. And I just remember at an early age, like around before middle school, I just remember feeling kind of like in my own little world all the time. And I love to do art, and so I started to kind of create this little world in my head. And what I realize now is that was the beginning of the calcium shell that was forming. So basically into my teenage years, middle school came around, that's such a special time of development for people because you're learning about yourself and you're learning about the world and how you fit in, and it's just a great age of exploration. And so I started looking outside of myself for the answers to things that I should have been able to find inside of myself. But again, I didn't really have any leaders or anyone in my life that was explaining that to me, and really no leadership at all pertaining to like figuring out who I was, what I was doing here on Earth, or any of the big questions. But I remember like I was contemplating those in my head even at such a young age, and I just maybe not applying words to them, but they were feelings that there was this feelings of feeling connected to some greater unity than what was being communicated to me. So I guess kind of what began to happen, 7th grade, I developed severe anorexia to the point where, I was literally starving myself and almost died. I wasn't quite hospitalized, but my parents did threaten it. They took away all my activities, sports, and everything because I was I was at such a low weight, and they were concerned. And eventually I got to the point where something clicked, and I decided to start eating again and put back on the weight. But unfortunately, throughout all this time, the diet and nutrition wasn't emphasized, or how to gain the weight back healthfully. So really just my dietitians, nutritionists, and family were like, just get the calories on. So basically I was eating like protein bars and shakes and all this crap to basically just put on weight, but there really wasn't any scientific background to it. Now I realize it was just, they were just all afraid, basically. So it was all fear-based. So then, I got to the point where I was okay. I could resume with my sports and activities. I love soccer, so I played soccer, and then going into high school, I developed a love just for running, and I loved running. I could just go and go and go, and it was effortless for me. So I stopped playing soccer and just wanted to focus on running. But again, unfortunately, the eating disorder still carried on, and then it turned somewhat into a mixture of anorexia, over-exercising, and just basically wearing out my body. And again, my coaches, my parents, my teachers, people who are older that I tried to look up to, no one taught me proper training. No one taught me how to take care of myself as an athlete. So I basically just wore my body down because I would just keep going and going and going. And it resulted in me having to have hip surgery in my junior year, and that killed my chances of running in college, which I see now as a good thing. I didn't really understand it at the time. I was pretty devastated because running was my life. And I just remember I was in such a severe depression like all summer because I was basically bedridden and I couldn't do anything. And it took me, it took quite a while to get back to being able to even walk properly and stuff. To this day, I still have issues with my physical body, but it's being worked out now. I'm much more aware of the adhesions and the imbalances, and it's just a part of development for me, is working on not only the different procedures, but a large part of it is the body structure as well. And so all of it goes together. But I experienced probably 6 years of continuous overuse injuries after that surgery, every tendonitis you can imagine, one after another. And what I did is I started to learn about the body and really focus on my posture and form, and eventually I got to the point where I wasn't injured anymore because I was aware of that and I practiced. So there's a lot of self-education, a lot of trial and error, patience, that sort of thing. But again, throughout all of this, into college, I still was dealing with the eating disorder. My life was getting more and more out of balance. I was developing more of a calcium shell, became really absorbed in myself and in my studies. I attended to the university and started out as a nutrition major because it's what I was really interested in, mainly for my own development, but then also just to help others. And I remember I got out of that program after the first year because I went to the classes and learned a little bit about what the progression of the years were going to look like. And I was like, you guys don't know anything about nutrition. You're telling everyone to eat 6 servings of bread a day and fruit and sugar and all this crap, and it didn't feel right to me. And I know I couldn't honestly promote that type of work, doing it that way. And I also didn't have any interest in staying in classes that were going to teach me things that weren't true. So I basically did my own self-studies over the years, and sought out resources that I trusted. And in the meantime, I changed my major to education, to teach science to kids. And I really enjoyed middle school, so I went into middle school as a middle school teacher. So yeah, basically my college life looked like, super stressful. I was working a part-time job. I raced bikes on the cycling team. I was on the triathlon team. I would work out 2, 3, 4 hours a day. Weekends, sometimes 6-hour bike ride, and then maybe like a run afterwards. And I enjoyed it. It's what made me feel whole in a way. But I knew that there's something not right with it at the same time, but I didn't know what. And I couldn't stand feeling guilty about it, so I would just do it because I loved it. But I really didn't have too many friends or people I was close to. I was always friendly with everyone, and I had roommates and stuff like that, people that I would hang out with from time to time. But I was really stressed out, lots of anxiety, and I took my studies really seriously. I was a straight-A student, and, I don't even know why it was so stressful for me. It was just because I think that was what was expected of me when I was a kid, and so that's what I expected of myself. So that was my college life. And basically, when I got out of college, I was a December graduate, which isn't really the best time to get a teaching job, but it just worked out where there was a Catholic school that needed a teacher. Randomly, I got a text message, I think on a Saturday, that asked if I was looking for a teaching job. I didn't even know who it was, but apparently it was the principal at this school. I'd never met her in my life, but apparently someone had passed along the word that I had graduated and needed a job. So she asked if I was interested in an interview. I met with her on a Sunday and then literally started the job the next day on Monday, and teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at this school. So I had 3 preps, and basically went day to day to day, planning my lessons for the rest of the school year that way. And, on top of that, if you're not a teacher, it's hard to really understand the amount of work teaching is and how much teachers put into their jobs. There's definitely a right and a wrong way to do it, and I think I did it the wrong way. At first, I had the energy to really put forth a lot of time and effort into the job, and I think my love for my students really motivated me to really make my classes interesting and fun and unusual and exciting and deep. Like, we always went into deep learning. But I wasn't really aware of what it was doing to my body. And I realize now a lot of it was just nervous tension I was running on, and adrenaline, and my sympathetic nervous system was overly stimulated all the time, very chronic. So on top of the teaching, I was also maintaining my active lifestyle, still running, still biking. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and, go get a 10 or 13 mile run in before work, and then, go ride my bike for an hour to 2 hours after work just to like de-stress. And, it was an addiction too. Like I couldn't stand not doing it. And I was so stressed out during the day. I wouldn't eat breakfast. I wouldn't eat lunch because there was no time to eat, I thought. And I was stressed out all the time during the day, trying to get class to class ready. So I really didn't eat until after school. And that's when the binge eating started. And eventually the eating disorder turned into bulimia. And at first it started with just like, once or twice a week. And eventually it turned into a daily thing, and sometimes more than once a day. So I taught 2 years at that school, went to public school teaching, taught 8th grade. That year was terrible, probably the worst year teaching I've ever had. And that year actually made me decide that I wasn't going to do it anymore. I realized it wasn't good for me. I didn't have the energy for it, and it just didn't fit. So I moved up to Michigan. I was living in Oklahoma at the time, and I moved up to Michigan to be by my family while I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, so they could be like a support system for me. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, because I was never close to my family, and if anything, my parents just made me more confused, and they didn't really understand me at all. I mean, they care about me and they love me, but I knew my gut, like I knew it was a bad idea and a bad decision, but I still went. And when I got up there, I just became really sick. So I stayed at their house and lived in the basement, and got pressured enough to where I took another teaching job, this time as an art teacher, but it was at a charter school, and kindergarten through 5th grade, not middle school this time. And I knew it was a bad idea, but I just didn't want to deal with my parents on my back and, telling me that I should use my degree, and, just I couldn't even be in their house and feel at rest. So that's how that went. And the school, was all about show. It was a charter school, and so I just remember the teachers, no one felt secure in their jobs. They were all amazing people, and I was so blessed to get to work with them and know them. I learned so much from them, and they put so much time and energy into their kids and into their jobs. But they were always afraid of losing their jobs because the administration always kept them in fear. So it wasn't really a great environment either. So I never really felt home anywhere. I just always felt like I was running, and in a way I was, because I didn't know what I was running to. I just knew what I was running from. And the actual running was kind of a manifestation of that. I couldn't stop running. It was the first thing I had to do every day, was just go run. Sometimes after work I would go run too, but then I got to the point where my health was just getting so bad that I couldn't do it anymore. I would keep trying and trying, but I would just feel terrible. And I started to experience, lots of headaches, started becoming allergic to all types of foods, insomnia, lots of bloating, indigestion, my whole body hurt. And then at this time, probably the bulimia was at its worst, and there would be days, days at a time where I would go and just buy junk food, eat it as fast as possible, and regurgitate it over and over and over again. And the funny thing is I didn't even know why I was doing it. I just know that it felt like an addiction, basically, that something else was like, it's almost like I was observing myself do all of this, and I would just watch it all happen and wonder. So eventually I got kicked out of my parents' house because they didn't really understand what was going on with me, and I refused to go see doctors or medical doctors because I knew they wouldn't really help me. They would just, look at the symptoms and tell me things that I knew weren't true. And I knew I had adrenal exhaustion. I knew I had chronic fatigue and all these things. And I would just put money into supplementation to try and remedy it all. Random supplementation. And at the same time, I was counteracting everything by basically eating all this, all these chemicals all the time, and, donuts and cookies and cake and just terrible, terrible things for your body. And, it was the main cause of it all. So lots of factors involved that were unbalanced in my lifestyle, basically. So I got to the point where there would be like 3 days out of the week where I wouldn't be able to even stand up or get out of bed without feeling dizzy. Usually it was like over the weekend, and my parents didn't understand, and so they kicked me out, and I'd basically just found the cheapest apartment I could to get by, and my goal was to just get through the rest of the school year. So I just remember, like, that was like my lowest point, was just being in that apartment. I was alone. My entire life felt like it had just dissipated, and I was just going through the motions, trying to act like everything was okay at work. Most of the time I wasn't even really cognizant of what I was doing. They don't know. But I looked sick. I felt sick. But there was a higher energy that still kept me going for the sake of my students. And so I finished the year. And also at that time, I just remember that the bulimia got so bad. I just remember laying on the ground, just crying, and this would happen a lot, where I just didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how to stop, and I didn't even know who of anyone that could help me except God. So I would just say, God, help me, just help me. I don't know how to help myself. Just help me get out of this. Save me. Like, I trust you. I need your help. And then sometimes I would doubt, like, maybe I don't really mean it, but I felt like I did. There was a time where I thought I was demon possessed because it was so bad. And I don't know. I just remember I kept going through it. And so anyways, eventually this homeopathic doctor came into my life. I met this random person in a parking lot one day, and I don't even know what we started talking about, but she told me that she was seeing a homeopathic doctor who was 91 years old and worked out of her house, and she gave me her number and said, yeah, call her and do exactly what she says and you'll get better. And I felt the Holy Spirit there, and I knew that this was a messenger sent from God. So I did that, and I met with this lady, and she began treating me, and, I had no money because I had spent all my money on binge food and trying to remedy myself and my health, and then also my apartment and, just everything. that was going on. I had no money, basically. And I got to the point where I couldn't afford treatment from her. And she loved the Lord and just said, I'll treat you and you can just pay me back the money whenever, if you do at all. And to this day, I'm eternally grateful because she at least stabilized my health, and the healing power of the Creator worked through her to help me get to a place where I could finish the school year and get out of there. So at the end of the school year, I moved from Michigan and went out to Idaho, and I guess my reasoning for that was like, I've always wanted to live out west, and I was like, well, this is the perfect time. I don't have any reason to be here. So I packed up my car, drove out to Boise, Idaho. I slept on a friend's couch for a couple weeks, found 2 jobs, found a cheap apartment to live in, and basically established myself. And I was there for 2 months, and it just felt empty, basically. Like, I couldn't understand why. There was great hills. I was right at the foothills, just could walk out the door and go running in the foothills for hours. The mountains, the outdoors, the culture there was just magnificent, but there was emptiness, and I couldn't figure out why. And I know I couldn't stay there, so I was really upset, but I was also very at peace with the fact that I needed to go. So I felt called back to Oklahoma, and some friends that I got reconnected with actually paid my gas money so I could drive back after I explained what was going on and what I felt like I needed to do. So I did, and found a room to rent at a house with an older lady, and basically settled in and waited to see what would happen, why I was supposed to be back here. So basically I got 2 jobs again, got somewhat of a savings account down, and and then I started to re-experience the symptoms that I would have before the homeopathic doctor was treating me. And the eating disorder was still a problem. Not as bad as it was in Michigan, but it was still like a weekly, sometimes a daily issue, and I was still exercising way too much and completely exhausted on top of that because I was working 50 or 60 hours a week. So I just remember that it got so bad, like around November of 2018. I just started to experience a lot of dizziness, overwhelming fatigue. My insomnia got worse, brain fog, my eating, I basically was doing like this keto diet type thing because I had read all about it and thought it was good, and I was basically just starving myself, and just eating coconut oil all the time and protein shakes and stuff, low carb. And I was just a nervous wreck all the time. I just had anxiety like nobody's business, and so I just felt like I wasn't doing what I should be doing, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing in terms of service, and I didn't know who I was. I didn't even know like what I enjoyed anymore. I was basically just existing, trying to figure out everything. And so the first thing that happened was I'm so sorry, I don't even know why I'm coughing. I haven't coughed all day. So December, when all of this was going on, I like to ride my bike. I commuted on my bike to work, and I was hit by a car on my bike on my way home one day, and the bike was totaled, but I was okay. I got a concussion, but I didn't have to go to the doctor or anything. The girl was nice enough. She actually stopped, drove me home, and she paid to replace my bike. And I was so grateful. And so what I did is I got the new bike and I immediately sold my car because I wanted that money for savings. I wanted to establish a savings account and, also start paying back the debt I owed to my creditors because I was getting in a hole and I knew I was overworked, and this seemed like a big chunk of money that I could have on hand, so that I didn't have to work as many hours, and I could, take a day off or two during the week. But, immediately after that happened, I was hit again by a car on my bike, and this time the bike was fine, and I wound up with a broken elbow, and, had to go to the emergency room. It required surgery, all this stuff. And it's funny, I remember getting hit and it was just this trailer, and we were going through the light, and his trailer came over and basically ran me over, and I went to the ground, and I just immediately remember I immediately knew that something in my arm wasn't right. And it was a little painful, but not too much. But there was just this serene peace. Up until that point, I just had this heartfelt prayer for everything to stop. I didn't know how to stop. I just felt stuck. And I didn't know how to get out. And it was all of this energy and this tension and this chaos was building and building and building the days and the weeks leading up to this event. And even that morning, I felt different when I left my house. It was very strange. It was it's like the feeling before a tornado where there's just stillness. But it's very unsettling. So, and then prior to that, my gosh, I just remember I felt like a crazy person. At work, I would have panic attacks. I'd be crying. I just remember I couldn't even express myself. I couldn't translate my thoughts into words and be able to explain what was going on. And I would just repeat, I'm okay, I'm okay. I can't explain it to you. I can't explain it to you. I'm so sorry, and I would just keep saying those things, I just needed people to leave me alone because I needed whatever it is that was going on to get settled out. And it did, and I really believe this was the answer to my prayer. And so laying on the ground after the accident, there was peace, and I felt somewhat of joy because I knew that this was it. This is what stopped my life. This is what stopped everything. And it brought me into a season of peace and stillness and silence. And in that position, with no car, no money, pretty much. I mean, I had some money from my car that I sold to live on for the next 2 months. Because I couldn't work with a broken arm. And just the trauma from the event was also very energy taxing. So I didn't even, the thought of trying to figure out how to work in this condition, I couldn't even go there. I was basically existing and receiving anything that would help me. And day by day, week by week, I just remember walking everywhere. I would walk all around town. It was the middle of winter, and everyone got used to seeing me with my sling, and I would always wear my clothes in very strange ways because I had to accommodate this this giant thing on my arm. But the blessings were within that just being, and slowly but surely the resources and the people and the things came that I needed to heal myself. And I guess in a sense that's not true. I never healed myself. All I was doing was being receptive to the healing energy of the Creator through various means. So with where I was at, basically, it was at that time that I came across nutritional balancing. So around February last year, and I just remember I just came across Dr. Wilson's website, like most people, and oh gosh, it was amazing. I think I read the article on adrenal fatigue actually first, and I was like, wow, this is really comprehensive. And then I went and checked out some of his other articles about development and stuff, and I just remember like thinking, this is it. This is the simplicity of how we should be living. This is the straight and narrow path, and it's that simple. And there's a lot of complexity to nutritional balancing, but in a way, if you compare it to the chaos of the world and the way people usually live their lives, living up to expectations and letting their egos run the show, it is simple, and it's easy. Like in the Bible it says, like, come unto me, all who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for my way is easy and my burden is light. And that's exactly what echoed within this way of living, and development itself was just this, like, hand in hand working with this energy that formed you and is in you and really is you, and it's just everything meshed in a very perfect way. And so I just remember I was so excited and so grateful, and I emailed Dr. Wilson, not really expecting him to write back, because I tried emailing doctors who published things on their websites before, and no one ever really responded, but he did. And I explained just how thankful I was for what he was doing with his life and for the information he shared on his website. And I was really interested in nutritional balancing, and just said, like, this is what's happened to me. When I get in a place where I can afford this, I want to start. And so he immediately wrote back and basically helped me start the program, and provided funding for me, and I didn't even know what to say. I felt like words couldn't even explain how thankful I was, because I knew that I guess for me it was kind of like reassurance that my desires were aligned with God's truth, because there's a lot of confusion with trying to figure out what was good and what was bad. I had a lot of